Madeira, Manchester, Madrid, Turin, and Manchester again. Aguero! Goal for South Africa! Goal for all Africa! Roma have risen from their ruins!
Welcome back to the On a Yellow Football Podcast, episode 15, which we've titled Future Stars. How are you doing today, Zach?
Not too bad. Braved the cold so we could put out a fantastic episode here.
Yeah, we've definitely braced the elements today. It is around minus 30.
It's minus 24. Feels like minus 35 with the wind chill. It's a cold one.
It's a cold one, but nothing that us Canadians cannot handle. So, you know what? I mean, did I want to come down here to do the episode in this frigid weather? No, but I really wanted to get this episode out because we have a lot of cool things to talk about, and that is including the future star, Matheus Mane. What are your thoughts on Matheus Mane's season so far, being the breakout player in a team that's had a pretty dismal season?
Well, despite him only having 3 goal contributions, I think he's definitely one of the bright spots in that team. He's kind of brought new energy to them towards, the games for them don't really matter to this point. It's kind of just building up that team's confidence a little bit for next season to get promoted again. And I think if they can keep hold of Mane for next season, he'll be a big talent for them, especially in the championship. I think he can be a top player.
Do you think that he will stay at Wolves, or do you think that he will move on? Because he's been linked with my team, Manchester United, and even Liverpool.
I think it depends on how much money teams are offering for him. I wouldn't personally let him go for anything less than 35.
The fees right now are 50 plus.
I mean, for Wolves, that'd be pretty good money, especially if the player says he wants that move. I think that's something they can't turn down.
Yeah.
50 plus million for a player with only 3 goal contributions is kind of crazy to me.
I think it's because of his ceiling being so high. He's proved in the games that he's played and kind of flourished in. He's proved, I think, more than the goal contributions that he has created. He's proved more in the sense of being a prospect that a lot of the big teams could mold and build. And I think with Man United, respectively, I think that he would be a good addition to our side. I don't think necessarily he would start games for us, but he would add to that bench depth, which we need. And also, he plays a game in which Manchester United plays right now under Carrick, and that is valuing players that can play multiple positions. We've seen Matheus Mane play right wing, left wing, cam, and even striker. So it's really cool to possibly get a player that can be playing in multiple positions and kind of grow that player with a bigger market team. And I mean, although he hasn't scored a lot of goals or contributed, he has 3 goals, 2 assists this season. I think that his ceiling is still extremely high. I feel like he is a really creative player, and you forget he's only 18 years of age. We can't be comparing this 18-year-old to a Lamine Yamal, who is the same age. We have to kind of compare it to other 18-year-olds in the league, and they don't necessarily get all the game time. And Matheus Mane is starting for a Premier League team, and that's something that we really have to put into consideration.
Well, he's played the full 90, I believe, 10 times out of his 15 games. He's been impactful when he can, get those proper chances, as seen against West Ham and Everton. He scored back-to-back games there, but it's been kind of slow since then. they've had tougher opponents, which can make sense. I think moving to a team where he has better support could help him for sure. I just think that, he's going to want to start wherever he goes. I don't think he's necessarily going to want to get moved for $50 million just to play a couple games off the bench for Man United.
I mean, that's true, but if you think about it, you're either playing in the championship or you're playing for a Premier
There's other
League team.
teams.
There is other teams.
He could definitely go to somewhere outside of
I just
England
think if
and get those starting minutes.
I just think if Man United or Liverpool is on the door, you don't necessarily pick the other team. You pick that team. Federico Chiesa is a good kind of option for that. He obviously signed for Liverpool wanting to play first team minutes, and he hasn't gotten that. But it's not necessarily all doom and gloom as he's playing for Liverpool, the Premier League champions of last season. And I mean, as an 18-year-old, it's whether he thinks of, I want to go to another team to get first team minutes.
I think it's more pivotal to go somewhere he knows he can develop than somewhere that is just a top team because it's a top team.
It's more important for development, but if you put your kind of yourself in his shoes, I don't necessarily know if you would pick another team to develop, or you would just pick the team that's spending the cash on you. If there's a team like Manchester United or Liverpool, like I said, at the door that are wanting to spend 45 to 50 million pounds, I saw even it go up even higher. And these two teams, like right now linked, are kind of neck and neck battling with each other. They're talking to his agent. They're doing all that stuff. I don't necessarily know if you kind of, take that down and say, I don't want to be playing for these teams right now because I need to develop. I mean, it's a smart decision.
Kind of the move that could turn him into a failed transfer down the line. If, you go to a team like a Liverpool where, Federico Chiesa, he's come on, he's proved that he can be a good player. He's scored big goals for them. He still doesn't start.
Yeah.
And he's proven that he can be that player that they need this season, and he still doesn't start. And I think if Matheus Mane goes to that team, he's a young player. He doesn't perform, he will never get minutes again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's something he has to consider in that potential move, is somewhere he knows he can get minutes and he can perform and develop. And I think at a top team in the Premier League doesn't necessarily fit him at this moment in his career.
I think, honestly, with that in mind, he could possibly, like you said, go somewhere outside of the Premier League in another European team. I know a lot of European teams in the Bundesliga and Liga, and even in La Liga and Serie A as well, they're always looking for talent. I think a team in the Serie A would probably benefit him the best if he was going to move outside of the Premier League. Because he's a really creative, technically gifted player, and Wolves is a team that values that creativity. And I feel like, with a league like Serie A, that's more tactics based, but based upon zonal marking, not necessarily sticking in challenges, I think it would really benefit him because it would allow him to have time on the ball to make those creative passes, make those creative runs, and dribble against the opponent. That's not necessarily always trying to go for the ball. Sometimes they're trying to, zonal mark to make sure that the attack gets extinguished down the line. But I think, I think it's tough to tell where Matheus Mane's head is at right now. Obviously, he's 18 years of age, like I said earlier. You don't necessarily know what he really wants to do. You don't necessarily know, as an 18-year-old, I don't know other teams right now that are kind of wanting him. Like, I know a lot of teams are trying to get bids or trying to talk to his agent. But when those big teams come in, you see a lot of young talent kind of get swept up by those big teams, and they either flop or they become first team players. And I don't know right now that Matheus Mane will get to that point. I agree with what you said that, as a player of especially that age, you need to develop, you need game time. And with those top Premier League outfits, you're not necessarily guaranteed that. But I don't really know what he would choose. Like I said earlier, if you were put yourself in his shoes as an 18-year-old and teams like Manchester United and Liverpool that you grew up watching, and you grew up watching them at the top level and echelon of football clubs. I don't necessarily know if he is going to turn that down to focus on development, or if he's going to try to, get his chance at a big team to prove himself.
The way I see it is he wants that big move, but other people in his life have to tell him that necessarily he has to think of other factors.
Yeah.
And can't just focus on that because of the team that it is.
Yeah.
He has to, see all the factors in it. Where he's going to play in the lineup, how many minutes he can potentially get, whether he potentially, he goes to a Liverpool and a Man United and ends up on their under-21 team for some time.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a move that he wants. Maybe Wolves can even loan him out and in hopes of getting promoted next season and keeping him for that team because he's obviously going to want to play at the top level. He's proven he can. And Wolves won't want to give him up for super cheap if they think there's something there. 50 million, it's great money, but I believe if he stays and develops, it goes out on loan potentially, he could be worth 110.
Yep.
And they won't want to miss out on that extra 60 million. I think it's something that his agent has to consider, his family, something that it's a lot more in depth than on the surface for sure.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you talk about the wingers market right now, and actually, I just think the player market, especially forwards right now, it's extremely inflated with value. And Matthias Mane being around 50 to 60 million pounds or whatever it was, I think. Let's see. Did I write it down? I might have, but he's around 50 to 60 million pounds, and I just think that he definitely Wolves could capitalize on that, keep him for another season, potentially, like you said, loan him out to a top team. Then he could possibly leave the club for even more money. Obviously, wingers and forwards especially go for extreme amounts of money in today's market. And when you have a young talent that's 18 years of age, turning 19 in September, then you really you have a really gifted talent. And I think that he really has to. I think a possible move could either benefit him or it could be a detriment, like we've talked about. And I think, I would want to see the move to Man United just because I'm a Man United fan, and I feel like his ceiling is so high, and Matthias Mane could fit really well in the team. But for Matthias Mane's career, we've seen a lot of players at Man United come to Man United and they flop and they become fragments of their former selves, and you just don't want to see that in a young talent like that. You want to see him flourish and grow into that player that he is destined to be at the moment, based off of just how he's developed. And one thing about Matthias Mane I want to touch about, it's he is a very strong talent coming through Wolves. His first touch is something that a lot of young talents at his age don't necessarily have. He has one of the best first touches I've seen from an 18-year-old and from a young player coming up. And I feel like, maybe a top team could capitalize on that and truly lead to his growth.
Well, it makes me think of, another player that both Liverpool and Man United are interested in on the wing is Yan Diomande.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that his value in the transfer is 80 million and Mane's is 50, whereas Mane's got two goals and 1 assist, and Diamande's he's got 9 goals and 5 assists.
Yeah.
And it's only a 30 million gap between those players, whereas it's very obvious Diomande is much more ready for the top level of football in the Premier League, any league really. And I think it just proves that the market's kind of inflated.
Mm-hmm.
Certain players go for way too much money.
And I just want to stress as well that the value for Mane is kind of like, it's kind of wishy-washy. You look at multiple sources and they say around this value. But the teams that we're talking about, Manchester United and Liverpool, have just gone into initial talks and have gone kind of like bids of possibly what they want. But I've seen things like Liverpool bidding like 80-something million. And they're in like a transfer war with Manchester United, but I don't think it's just those two teams that are wanting to get Mane. I feel like it's just because they're the big teams, and when a big team comes calling and knocking at your door, obviously the media's attention is on it. I haven't heard any like really big journalists like Ornstein or Fabrizio Romano yet talk about like possible value for the player. I think they just kind of brushed on the point that these teams are in talks with the agent of Matheus Mane. But I think that definitely he's a talent that should be looked at. Whether he moves in the summer or stays on Wolves, only time will tell. And definitely he is someone that we should be watching. And he's very talented and will be talented in the future. Okay, so after the Matheus Mane talk, I want to talk about the FA Cup. Obviously, the FA Cup has come back last weekend. My team, though, was not there because we lost against Brighton 2-1 in the previous FA Cup draws. Now, there was a big story coming out of the FA Cup. Like I said in the past episode, the FA Cup is one of the best football competitions in the world. It sees all of the teams in the football pyramid of England fight for a chance to either play against a Premier League outfit or a chance to hold the trophy in their hands. And it brings out a ton of stories of David versus Goliath moments in which a team that is less favorable to win comes out with grit and passion for the game and beats the big Goliath team. And we had another moment. Obviously, before we talked about Macclesfield, they, of course, beat Crystal Palace. And they beat them, of course, in that famous Macclesfield game at their home turf. But there was another game, and it was less drastic with the placement of the teams, but it was still relevant, and that is Mansfield Town, so close to Macclesfield, but Mansfield Town. They beat Burnley, and it was kind of an emphatic game in which saw Burnley score first and then saw Mansfield Town score 2 after that with a beautiful free kick in the 80th minute to seal the victory for the town.
Well, you have to talk about the Mansfield defending
Yes.
and goalkeeper. Burnley had a 3.64 expected goals, 22 shots, but only 4 actually made it on target. Kind of embarrassing.
I think it
Burnley
just
to not
puts salt.
score those goals.
It puts salt in the wounds to a kind of a dismal season for Burnley, in which they're fighting to try to maintain their spot in the Premier League, being second last in the league. And
An 80th minute free kick goal.
it was a beautiful free kick. To be honest, I don't think Burnley was really expecting anything from that. It was a beautiful free kick goal.
By Louis Reed.
Exactly. Obviously, I don't really know these players. They play in the third tier of England, but it's just, I think the story itself it's just bigger than the team. It's bigger than the players, and it really just shows how good the FA Cup is. And obviously, Mansfield Town right now, they're 15th place in the third tier of English football. That is not good. 15th place, I believe, is like 3 places, maybe 2 places from the drop, from relegation, I think. Oh, no,
That's pretty mid-table.
It's mid-table? How much
There's
teams are in
24
League?
teams.
How much teams are League One?
There's a fair amount.
Yeah. Well,
24, yeah.
24.
They're fairly
Okay, so they're
solid
mid-table.
and mid-table.
Well, they're mid-table versus, of course, a Premier League team that might not be a Premier League team next season. But again, I think, to put into perspective, like I do with all of these big upsets, Mansfield Town in their home pitch, which they call the One Call Stadium, has 9,186 people capacity versus Turf Moor, Burnley's stadium, which has 22,546 people capacity. Obviously the market value for the teams is drastically different, and definitely Burnley should have won this game. I think it was more, like we said with the Crystal Palace game, it was the missed chances from the Premier League team Burnley, and obviously Mansfield Town with the little chances that they had, of course, scored them. They could have scored another, actually, to tie the game to 1-1, but it was called off for offside. So Mansfield Town could have won 3-1. But the 2-1, in my opinion, brings the drama of the FA Cup into play, and it creates a better story in which Mansfield Town beat the Goliath Burnley.
Well, there was another David versus Goliath in this round. Macclesfield FC, obviously, coming off their big win. They played another Premier League team, Brentford.
Yeah.
They only lost 1-0 in that game,
I know.
despite having only 26% of possession.
I think, it just shows the heart of Macclesfield Town. Obviously, they're coming off of the extreme high of beating Crystal Palace at home, and, Crystal Palace being the team that won the FA Cup last season and only got to play one game with their FA Cup winners' ball. But I think it just shows the grit, determination of these smaller teams. They don't really have a lot to lose necessarily. Obviously, they want to win, but I think just playing against a Premier League team is a win. And only losing 1-0 really just shows the grit, determination,
And on the own goal, too.
It was an own goal by their center back, who was a pivotal player in the game against Crystal Palace that they won.
Well, I wanted to touch on
who I'm pretty sure is also a gym teacher.
some more of the stats in the game. Brentford had 394 accurate passes to Macclesfield's 71. They took 14 shots from inside the box, but only one on target.
Which is
The
crazy.
one that went in, I believe.
Yeah, which was an
technically.
own goal.
They had 8 blocked shots, and they had the same amount of shots on target as Macclesfield Town did. Macclesfield also got a
How
shot
many
on target.
block shots did Macclesfield Town have?
They blocked 8.
Okay, so Macclesfield Town are just showing, good old English football, and that is just getting in front of literally everything. And
They only made 44 passes in the opposition's half in the game, and apparently only 27 in their own half.
Which is to be honest, it's something that was expected. It's not necessarily.
They had 44 clearances.
Yeah, that's typical. Low-level English football playing against a better team. Let's just let's just get the ball out. If the ball is in their half, then they can't score on us. And obviously the block shots just shows again, they're determined to win. They're getting in front of the ball. They do not want to concede.
And they have a player on their team, Luis Lacey, 21-year-old left back, who I think could get a move to a fairly high-rated team because he put in 2 fantastic performances against Premier League sides. He played the full 90 against Brentford in an 8.1 rating and played 79 minutes against Crystal Palace and had a 7.8.
And, it's really cool to see that because obviously this is a team, to put into perspective here, Macclesfield Town is a team that is semi-professional. And all of their players, almost all of their starting 11 and players on the bench, all of them have day jobs, and then they train 3 days a week. They train 3 days a week. They don't have a nutritionist. They don't have a they may have a fitness coach, but they don't necessarily have a private fitness area, and I think like, their dressing rooms are probably like the same size as a Premier League team's away washroom. Like, it's not necessarily like put into perspective here. This is very impressive. These are semi-pro players, and they all have day jobs. I know one of them is a gym teacher. I'm pretty sure that was, like I said before, that was Heathcote, the center back that scored the own goal to have Brentford move on. And they have other players that are like football coaches, and it's just really cool to see that these players that are playing semi-professionally and obviously have day jobs, obviously aren't getting really paid like a crazy salary comparatively to the Brentford team. They are playing and going toe to toe with this Premier League teams that are professionals. They are getting paid millions of dollars, and of course Igor Thiago is getting player of the months in the Premier League, and it's really cool to see a team go toe to toe. I think again, it's a moment of I think missed chances by that Premier League side. I think they underestimated the level and ability of the Macclesfield players, and I think it's the drive. The Macclesfield players, they don't really have a lot to lose, like I said earlier, and they just want to win, but they're really just happy to be there. And I feel like that kind of plays with their football. They gain a ton of confidence from beating Crystal Palace, and that confidence kind of seeped into the last game that they played in the FA Cup. And I think it's just something that we really need to cherish this FA Cup tournament, as it always produces these moments.
Well, I wanted to talk about Lacey's stats a little bit more.
Yes,
I think he
do.
could get swept up by a championship team for
Really?
sure. He had the most tackles in the match with 5. He was the most fouled player in the match by Brentford 3 times. It happened. He won the most duels in the match with 16. He created their chance. He had 0.6 expected assists, 16 defensive contributions, 5 out of 5 successful dribbles, 2 out of 2 on his accurate crosses, 2 out of 4 accurate long balls, 5 passes into the final third. He was a force to be reckoned with against Brentford, and I think it could be a player who gets that move. He had 2 interceptions, 6 recoveries, 3 headed clearances, 8 other clearances, a block, 5 tackles. He was a force to be reckoned with in that game for sure.
Do you think that he would go all the way up to the championship, or just like
he
EFL2?
Performed pretty well against a championship team, a Premier League team.
Yeah.
I think he played the full 90. He's young. He could definitely get a move to a championship team, not as a starter. Definitely off the bench, though. I believe he could do a job in that league.
How old is he?
He's 21.
21. Okay, so he has
definitely
time.
has the capacity to turn himself into a top-tier professional footballer.
And we've seen moments like this where there was a guy that dazzled in that lower league, and a Premier League team or a EFL championship team took a chance. Obviously the big name player that we can talk about is Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy was in non-league until he was 23, 24, and then he got his move, and I think that's something that the FA Cup brings. It brings attention to these players that are not necessarily getting a lot of attention. I don't think anyone really knew what or who Macclesfield Town were until that game.
Well, and then
against Crystal Palace.
He did a very similar game against Palace. He created a chance in that game, got a shot on net.
He's a left back, eh?
Yeah, 3 out of 4 successful dribbles, 7 passes into the final third. He's a very good attacking fullback, it seems, and something that I think a lot of teams would love to get their hands on.
Well, if he's only 21, I mean, he has a high enough ceiling that necessarily I think a team can take a chance. I don't necessarily think a championship team would. Maybe, potentially. I think definitely something in EFL League 1, EFL Championship 2, technically that's only one tier above, right? Because I'm pretty sure they're tier 5.
No, they're a sixth tier.
They're sixth tier.
They're in National League North.
Oh, yeah, they are in National League North. So 2 tiers up, which I think 2 tiers up for a player that's playing that good against Premier League players. I don't think that's that much of an increase.
Well, I think, he's a player that a team could, just they see the performances take a big swing on him.
Yeah.
He probably won't cost them anything.
Well, no.
If it doesn't work out, he can go back to that level, and it's kind of all fine for every party. I think he could, even get like potentially a trial
Yeah.
at one of those teams, who he does, and then get a move there. I think he's a good talent for sure, though.
Yeah, it's I think that's what I said like before. Like the FA Cup brings light to these talents, and it is why that tournament is it's just such a gift to the football world. And I think that a lot of other leagues have tournaments like this. You got the Copa del Rey, and other tournaments like that. But I think definitely the FA Cup is the one that's mostly broadcasted. A lot of people know the FA Cup, and I feel like it's something that definitely we need to cherish and maintain. Obviously, it's the oldest competition, or one of the oldest competitions in the world for a reason, for the world of football. And definitely that's another reason.
Well, he is the brother of Shea Lacey, Man United
Okay,
player.
that's why, yeah.
He played in the Barnsley Academy and Tranmere Academy. I think he could, definitely make a move to a top team.
Definitely could make a move. I mean, obviously he has a footballing family, so he has a name recognition there, and most likely probably has a similar agent, if not the same agent as his brother. So it's something that definitely we should look out for. What's his full name?
Luis Lacey.
Louis Lacey.
He's 21-year-old left back from England. He's played 25 games in the National League North, a goal and 2 assists. No cards.
And I mean, if you think about it as well, the manager for Macclesfield is Wayne Rooney's brother. So I mean, it's just cool that club has a deep footballing connection that not a lot of people would actually know.
He's started every single game for them in the FA Cup this season.
Okay.
He started all 4 games and played 75% of the minutes in that competition.
And has been kind of a star for a team that not a lot of people know. So that's just really cool to see that he gets highlighted in a way that playing in a team that's in the 6th tier of English football wouldn't necessarily get that spotlight. Now, I wanted to talk about Ligue 1. So Ligue 1 is getting it's getting kind of juicy. Like the league that we all said was a farmers league, right now is not looking that much like a farmers league, with PSG being in 2nd and Lens being being first, but they got back to first after PSG were first for a couple of match weeks. Lens is now back number 1. And it's just, I think it's something that we really needed to see in that league. Obviously, Ligue 1 is a league, I think, that has a lot of talented players in it. And a lot of the teams have like 1 or 2 guys that are really, really good. They're flashy players, and they're players that a lot of people look to and being like, they could possibly get a move out of the league. But I wouldn't necessarily say that the league is competitive. But this year, it's kind of proving me wrong, because Lens is first. What's your thoughts, Zach, on Lens's season so far? Obviously, being toe-to-toe with the French giants, Paris Saint-Germain, Marseille, and Lyon.
Well, I don't think they were the team that people would have expected to be the one challenging there. But I think they would have expected Marseille, Lille, or Lyon to be the one in first. Lens have had a pretty big rise in the last couple of years. They haven't really had any big talents necessarily, but they've been a team that's performed well recently.
Well, 2 years ago they got 2nd place, I believe.
Yeah, 3 seasons ago they were 2nd in the league, and they've had their moments being a top team in the league, and I think it's a team built off of just will. If there's a will, there's a way. They don't necessarily have a top player on that team.
And yeah, I totally agree. They're a team that's just really driven right now. And I feel like they are hungry. They want to win games. And it's something that I just think for a team, especially in France, where it's dominated by at least three teams, but one team kind of reigns supreme, and that's PSG. It's really cool to see another team like Lens in that situation for a possible title.
Well, you look at their market value, it's only 51 million, whereas the team they just beat 5-0, Paris FC, is 82.
Yeah.
And that's a brand new promoted team in Paris FC. I think it's just kind of proof that monetary value doesn't necessarily mean everything, and having a will on your team is very important.
Well, yes. I mean, I think they're showing that having star power doesn't necessarily warrant or mean that you're gonna get results. Obviously, PSG is coming off of almost winning literally every single title within France and Europe, and they're second place right now because they're dropping points. And Lens right now is really focused on that league, and they're winning games. But now it's not necessarily like they're winning games like 3-2. Like that 5-0 win against Paris FC is something that you shouldn't reckon with. They're really showing that they're hungry now to win games and win games by a large amount.
And they've added to their team now with Saint Maximin.
Yeah.
Coming back from Mexico, the 28-year-old Frenchman has 3 goal contributions in 2 league games.
I mean, we knew Saint Maximin had talent. Obviously, Saint Maximin of old, when he was wearing his Gucci headband on Newcastle, we thought that he would be a top player for Newcastle for years to come. And then they cashed on him.
It was kind of a shock transfer.
Well, they cashed in on him during the kind of the Saudi Pro League, the Saudi Pro League revival. When they just started spending and as much cash as possible on every single player, it seemed.
He hasn't had a season where he's had a below 7 rating since 16-17 when he was playing in France for Bastia.
Well,
so he's clearly a player that has good performances wherever he goes.
And I mean, you think about Saint Maximin, he's obviously French, so that helps in a league in France, obviously with communication. And obviously, he's played for Ligue 1. He's played in the Ligue 1, I should say.
Yeah. One season.
One season, but he's played in France. He knows how to play the French football style. I think it's a good move. Obviously, he didn't like being in Mexico, I don't believe.
He left because they were being racist towards his children.
Yeah. And obviously that's just really sad to see, and you want to take that out of the game. And I think it's a really good move for Saint Maximin to kind of show whoever was saying those things, kind of show them and say, you know what, if you say those things, you guys don't get a big player. That big player in Saint Maximin is going to go. And leave, because that is unnecessary and horrific to actually have those things in the game, in the world of football. So obviously he made that move, and now it was a really good move for Lens to pick him up, right? We said that Lens doesn't really have a star player, and Saint Maximin might be past his prime, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't be a big asset to the team. Talking about people that we thought were past their prime, they kind of been their league or their team has kind of been spearheaded by 2 players. One of those being Edouard, Odsome Edouard, the former striker for Crystal Palace. He joined the team, and he has 8 goals this season and 3 assists in Ligue 1. And we thought he was kind of past his prime. He's obviously older in age, but that does not necessarily mean that his form has gone, and he's really kind of flourished on Lens. It seems like Lens as a team, obviously they're hungry for points, they're hungry for the wins, but they seem to be a team where a lot of players are older, but they're kind of getting a resurgence, or they're kind of breaking out as players, and really showing how skillful they are. Another player I really want to talk about is Wesley Said. Wesley Said is 30 years of age, and he was kind of seen as just kind of a middle ground talent in Liga, and a player that could get you goals but wasn't necessarily a star player. And now he's proving how good and how skillful he is, having his best season he's ever recorded in professional football. And he's having it on Lens. And right now, this season, he has the most goals he's ever scored in a season, with 10 goals and 2 assists at the moment. And he's played 19 games. Last season, he was playing for Lens. He played 24 matches and only had 3 goals. So it just shows that, age doesn't necessarily mean that your potential is going to be lost, or that you can't break out as a player. It just shows that really it's not a defining factor in one's potential.
Well, Lens has a very good goaltender too.
Yes.
In Robin Risser.
Mm-hmm.
He has, in 22 matches, has 9 clean sheets.
Yeah.
And 2 penalty saves.
Which, again, is what you want from a goaltender, right? You want him to make saves. You want him to make penalty saves, because penalties obviously are high percentage chances for the penalty kick taker. And if you can save those, it really saves you in a lot of games. But, I think with Wesley Said, it's his 13th season in Liga, and it's his best season. And he's a player that's battled with injuries, and he explained a month ago, while he was kind of on track to have his best season, he said he obviously struggled with injuries. In 2020, he was out for 8 months because he ruptured his cruciate ligament, and he kind of lost a lot of confidence, and he really likes playing for Lens now, obviously making the move from Toulouse. And I think what Lens have benefited on is they've took a gamble on this striker. They got him as a striker, but they actually moved him to more of a cam role, and he said this really helped him in his development. He said that the cam role makes him focus less on scoring goals and being the goal scorer, and more on facilitating chances, and more on keeping his team in big games. And that's just something that has really helped him. It's just something that's really cool to see. Now, I want to talk about what the manager of Lens said. Obviously, Lens is playing kind of over their kind of ceiling right now. Obviously, people didn't think that they would be battling for the championship title in Liga in this season, but the Lens manager, Rene Sage, I believe his name is, or Pierre, sorry. Pierre Sage referenced in his press conference, saying that they're focusing on the points rather than the championship at the moment, because obviously everyone's saying, are you focusing on getting the championship right now? And he said, you know what, we're focusing more on the points. And he says, we've reached that objective. We've got to the kind of pinnacle of the points, being the top of the table. And he said they'll continue doing that. But he also said that their next objective and what they're focused on is the Conference League. Then they're focused on the Champions League. And obviously, he even said that he's less concerned about PSG and more concerned about Olympique Lyon and Marseille, because obviously he wants Lens to get that Champions League spot. And maintain that Champions League spot, so that they can obviously get the Champions League money next season, and just the Champions League next season. Obviously, you want to play in that tournament. And I think it's just something that's, I think for a manager, it was really well said. Like, obviously, he's probably thinking about the title, but I think it's really important to kind of instill in the players that, yes, the title is there, but the points matter more. Because if you get more points than PSG right now, seeing that they're 1 point ahead of them, you're going to win the title. And I think that's something that any team that is kind of pushing higher than their weight should focus. They should focus on the mini battles and the mini wins and the objectives along the way during the season, and then good results will come. So that was, pretty much Ligue 1. Ligue 1, obviously, the title situation is really cool. PSG dropped points. And I think for PSG right now, they really need to, I think, step up their game. Obviously, last season, they won almost everything. And I think that PSG really need to step up their game if they want to be champions again. And obviously they won the Champions League next season. Moving on to the Champions League, obviously the Champions League is getting played right now, the Champions League matches to get to the knockout rounds. They are knockout technically. And Newcastle was playing against Karabakh. I don't know what the final score was.
6-1.
6-1. And you know who scored 4 goals in that? I don't know if he scored other goals after that, but 4 goals was Anthony Gordon, the record breaker. Anthony Gordon would be his title now, because now he's the all-time top goal scorer in the Champions League for Newcastle. He had 4 goals against Karabakh, and he now has the most goals out of Newcastle player in the Champions League.
What does the man have to do to get a 10 rating then? And he got a 9.9.
I feel like nobody gets 10 ratings anymore. I feel like the only 10 rating I've ever seen was Kylian Mbappe and Lionel Messi in the World Cup final in 2022.
Well, it's crazy that Anthony Gordon has scored more goals in one game than he has in the Premier League this season.
Yes. Obviously, right now this season, he's dominating in the Champions League, being 3rd place, I believe, in goals. And in the league, he is not doing well. He has 3 goals, 2 assists, I'm pretty sure. Or something on the lines of that. 3 goals, 2 assists. He's obviously not doing well. But he's... I think in the Champions League, obviously we knew he had class. We knew he was a great player. He had a breakout season at Newcastle a couple years ago where he scored 10 goals, I believe. And now he has 10 goals in the Champions League. He's doing very, very well. But, I think Newcastle would want it translated to the league a lot. Because right now they're not doing great in the league. They're mid-table, I believe. And I think with Newcastle, they really want to get top 4 again. And Anthony Gordon being really good in the Champions League, I feel like it's kind of a gut punch to them being like, you know what, I like how we're doing well in the Champions League, but can you kind of put that into your game during the Premier League games to help our team across the finish line to get to the Champions League spots?
Well, I was just looking at Karabakh's team. And Karabakh FK's manager his name is Karban Karbanov, and he's coached there for 673 matches. Now,
That is crazy.
as well as coaching the Azerbaijan national team from December 2017. He's been their head coach.
So he's
in Karabakh since June 2008.
That is really cool to see, because obviously, if you think about that, he's brought their team to the Champions League, and he must be like football royalty there, being the man to bring a team from Azerbaijan to new heights that I don't think they would know if they would be they would ever reach.
Well, Karabakh before signing him had only won the league one time and the cup twice. And since then, they have now won it 12 times, the league, and the cup 8 times. So he's kind of absolutely changed the footballing culture in Azerbaijan. I think he's like the guy in football in Azerbaijan.
He is the guy. If you think about it as well, like they went from being nothing before he really came, like you said, only winning once, and now they're a team in the Champions League and also a team in EAFC as well. So their players are on the video game that they've played, and they're now on the they're now on the stage in which they've watched players dance on, and now they are the players that are dancing. And I feel like it's just really cool. Obviously, their time in the Champions League has come to an end,
Well,
but that's not necessarily a bad thing though.
since 2013-14, they have lost one time in the league. They got second, and this season they're currently in second right now.
That is crazy.
4 points behind Sabah FK.
So, like, really just Karabakh is the team in Azerbaijan.
They are Azerbaijan. I believe most of the players on their team play for the national team, obviously.
Okay, yeah.
But, I mean, it makes sense because they're the best team. They got all the best Azerbaijani footballers on that team.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's a couple Azerbaijan footballers that play abroad, but I can't put my name onto who they are.
Looking at the Azerbaijan national team, they got one guy that plays in Korea.
That's cool.
This team plays in Azerbaijan, yep. They got Columbus Crew and
that's cool.
Motor Lubin in Poland. They have 3 players that do not play in the Azerbaijan Premier League. And out of those players, most of them are from Karabakh. If you look, they have the Karabakh goalie, and they have 5 Karabakh defenders on their team. But they don't have anyone else on the team from Karabakh, actually, which is kind of surprising. No attackers or midfielders.
Actually, it is surprising, but Karabakh as well. They have a lot of. Actually, some of their forwards are from. I know they have a guy from Brazil on their team, who's their main cam, I believe.
I do not see him on here, but I'll
maybe
believe
not
you.
then. Oh, that could have been a different team I'm talking about. That could have been the other kind of team, Karat Almaty, who is of course not in the Champions League anymore. But, well, Karabakh, I think, is just a crazy story. Again, we talked about underdog moments, and it was kind of a David versus Goliath moment again. And I mean, obviously they lost, but they really showed that they could go toe-to-toe. Like, they were very close of making the knockout stages through that, like, not through the playoffs, right? So, obviously I think it's the playoffs right now, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Because the round of 16 would be afterwards.
yeah, so Newcastle obviously gets their chance in the round of 16. I think is pretty cool. If you think about it, I think the just Karabakh situation. I don't even think they're angry about losing. I mean, they're on the biggest stage in the world, or one of the biggest stages in Europe, and one of the biggest stages in the world for the world's game. And they put their team on the map. And people know who Karabakh is now, and it's just something that is really, really cool.
Yeah, Kairat is the team that has the Brazilian,
Yes.
and they went toe-to-toe with Arsenal, only losing 3-2.
Yeah. And it was a very close game as well, which is also just really cool to see. Again, like these stories that you would never heard of these teams before. Obviously, I always bring up Sheriff. Sheriff going toe-to-toe and beating Real Madrid. Like, these are big teams that these teams are facing against, and they're putting their team on the map. Obviously, you wouldn't think about Sheriff or Karat or Karabakh, but now you know who these teams are, and you know who some of these players are, and it puts the players on the map, the team on the map, the league on the map, even the countries on the map. I know some people probably don't know where Azerbaijan is on a map, and I think it just puts everything into context, and it gives people a lot of chances to learn about these teams and leagues and how football is played around the world. Now, I just want to, we talked about the Champions League, we talked about Manchester United, we talked about Mateus Mane, and we talked about Lens. But the one thing we also did not talk about, and I kind of want to do it, it's a segment I'm going to call for the final 6 minutes that we have here, and that is football flashback. So, Zach, I'm going to start off this football flashback with a question, and that is, do you remember the 2022 World Cup in Qatar?
I do remember that World Cup.
What was your favorite moments about that World Cup?
That Argentina-Netherlands game was my favorite in that tournament.
I mean, that game was crazy if you think about it. A lot of tension in that game between two big teams and kind of the height of their potential. Obviously, Argentina came to win that game in penalties, but it just really showed that, I think Netherlands should have won that game. I remember watching it too. There was a lot of tension going on.
Well, there was, I believe, a couple of red cards at the end of the game.
Yeah,
too.
there was a couple of fights, and it got a little bit heated. But it just shows again how big those game moments are, and how pivotal one mistake can be. And of course, they got on to win. But Wout Weghorst, I'm pretty sure, in that game got a brace to tie the game up right at the end of the game to bring the team into penalties, into extra time.
Mr. Wout
Weghorst, and I mean, he's kind of been the striker for the Netherlands, which is quite neat to see. Obviously, now he's playing at Ajax. I don't know. He goes around a lot and plays for
for a lot of teams at this point.
Yeah, Man United, a little whirl at Man United for a little bit. I think the 2022 World Cup was a really cool World Cup. I think one thing that was cool about it was because we live in Canada, it was the watching it during school, watching it in school. I remember, you'd just walk down the halls and then you would see a bunch of people watching on this big screen, and it was like Brazil playing, and it was during like a lunchtime. So I remember watching games with people I never talked to before, connecting to the game of football, and that's how beautiful football is. It connects people that you would never talk to because of the love for the world's game and the world's sport. I remember, going to lectures early in the morning, and you would see multiple people have their phones out, and it was one game or rather of football during that World Cup. Obviously, I would want to see England go a little bit higher, but they didn't. And of course, Canada, I think the Davies goal was one of my favorite moments to see, being Canada's first World Cup since 1986. And Davies, who has been kind of Mr. Canada, Captain Canuck, he came in and he scored the one and only goal I believe we scored in that tournament, but it was a big step forward into this Canadian journey, and this journey in which we're kind of riding right now into the next World Cup, which hopefully we see more goals.
We did score a second one, but it was, I believe, an own goal.
Okay.
Against Monaco.
Yeah.
But yeah, Naif Aguerd own goal.
Okay.
Made that game 2-1 against Monaco.
You're the West Ham legend.
Former snake of West Ham.
And I also wanna talk about the final. I think it's probably the best football match I have ever watched in my life. Was the World Cup final in 2022 between Argentina and France, the previous winners. What a game! You had Mbappe going from teenage kicks to an established world-class professional during this World Cup. And of course, you had the one of the greatest of all time, Lionel Messi, wanting to prove himself on the national team scale, trying to win it for Argentina. And it was just a wonderful game to watch. And it was just, football moments, and it really kind of showed the level of the World Cup final, and it's something that I'm gonna always remember. Every time I watch the World Cup, I'm gonna remember Mbappe getting the most goals in the tournament, but not winning the tournament, getting a hat trick in the final, bringing his team comeback victory, or almost a comeback victory. The save from from Martinez on Kolo Muani right at the end. That could have seen France hoist back-to-back World Cups, and then of course it went to penalties, and of course France did not win that tournament, and Messi hoisted and kind of established himself, even though he was already established, but established himself as one of the greatest of all time, and in some people's eyes, the greatest of all time. And it would see him also win the Ballon d'Or that previous season.
Well, and current West Ham defender Axel Disasi was on that team for France.
Axel Disasi was on that team. Aguerd was in that World Cup as well. So you had quite a lot of West Ham players involved in that World Cup. Of course, I could say countless Man United players that were as well. But, that's for another episode. All right, so we've come to the end of this episode, episode 15. It was a pretty cool episode. There was a lot to talk about for future stars, especially Mateus Mane and Lens, who are the unlikely favorites in Ligue 1 right now, being top of the table. All right, Zach, can I get a send-off, please?
Bonjour, au revoir, and have a great rest of your cold day today.
Yeah.
Unless you're somewhere that's nice and warm.
Unless you're somewhere that's nice and warm. I know I'm going to be channeling that energy to stay warm. But with that being said, take care, guys, and we'll see you next episode.